as the countdown picks up momentum for the second Grenada Invitational right here in St. George's, Grenada. So, on the third edition, the third episode of this program, the spotlight falls on the medical aspect of this. So our guest with us is Dr. Francis Martin. We'll also speak to Chief Organizer Michael Bascom, and he's going to be talking about some of the athletes who are headed for St. George's for the Grenada Invitational. Stay with us for the latest edition of the Grenada Invitational Countdown. Before we go into the discussions, everyone, of course, as I tell you, Michael Bascom will be here. We have Dr. Francis Martin, he's here. But we also like to give you a taste reminiscing on the action from a year ago.
Sean Merritt in 4, Wallace Spearman in 5, McQuay in 2, the quarter miler. And I'm sure LaShawn Merritt will appreciate you calling him a young man at 30. And the gun is off. LaShawn Merritt in 4. Wallace Spearman in lane 5. Making the turn as you hear the Vuvuzelas roar here in Kirani James Athletic Stadium. On the home straightaway, Wallace Spearman starting to fade, but on the inside, look at the power of LaShawn Merritt. Trying to hold on the inside, and LaShawn Merritt comes to the tape. Close, but I think he got the win.
All right, so we saw a taste of that from last year, and I know based on the ticket sales that's picking up quickly now, I know what the feeling and the thinking of people in Grenada, in the diaspora, across the world, headed for St. George's. Let's say hello and hi to Dr. Francis Martin. He is on the subcommittee for medical response. Welcome, doctor.
Thank you, Rawle. Thanks for having me.
Well, first and foremost, put this into context for us, the role of the committee, the subcommittee for medical response.
Well, as the name suggests, it's a medical response, and I generally like to open by saying when everybody else is having fun, then there are some categories of staff that does not have any fun, and medical happens to be one of those, because it's a mass casualty, it's a mass event, and so there's a potential for mass casualty.
Right.
So really our role primarily is just to prepare for the for any kind of mass casualty that may occur. I mean, hopefully, that doesn't happen, but really that's what our role is.
Okay. So when you say mass casualty, give me a better feel
well,
for this.
and whenever there are any mass of people gathering, there is always a potential for any accidents that may occur from the patrons, the persons visiting the facility. But the other aspect of what we do is providing medical response and medical coverage for any injuries that athletes may or may not come down with, and even the local as well as international athletes.
Right.
So really and truly, that's what it is. The little cuts and bruises that may happen, the aches, the strains, sprains, those sort of things.
All right.
So that kind of spans the two arms of what we do.
Right. I just want to ask a quick question here as you talk about working with the athletes. Some of these international athletes, they work with their medical people. How would that work out now?
In the medical fraternity, it works really, really well. I mean, there is a code of ethic and conduct that happens between professionals.
Right.
And so if athletes come, one of my first job is to find out what kind of medical professionals are they working with, or they coming with. Some of them come with their own physiotherapists, their own massages, and so on. And in that case, my job is to facilitate that person doing their work.
Right.
So I assist them in whatever they want to get and to have their work done. And so it has always been a really nice, good working relationship with those.
Okay.
But that being said, generally, the medical requirements and the allied health requirements of these international athletes are much more than we are normally accustomed to
Right.
in our own sphere of things. And so that in itself is a great learning experience for our response.
And this is where I want to ask you about at this point, the lessons from last year was the inaugural Grenada Invitational. You were there. What were some of the things you picked up, lessons learned, that things you think we could carry into the second
Right.
Grenada Invitational?
It was a great opportunity to see a stark difference between the medical requirements or the medical services that we've always provided for our local sporting activities and the medical response that is expected to be provided for the international athletes. The international athletes, very big on their agenda is things like massage therapy, for
Right.
example, getting the muscles all relaxed and so on. Even ice baths or cold therapy, so that the muscles, don't get wasted and that sort of thing. And so I recall from the very first night athletes dropped in. The first thing they asked for was the ice baths, and that was strange to me because normally we don't do that sort of thing here on the island. So you actually have to provide ice for them to do that sort of thing, and then thereafter it was very much massage therapy. They needed to get massages sometimes twice a day, even on the sideline of the training tracks or the warm-up tracks, they also require massage therapy there.
Right.
Another thing was the use of sort of alternative medicines or chiropractor, and the aligning of the musculoskeletal system. That was actually quite huge on those guys as well. Some of them require their musculoskeletal systems to be aligned before and after a race. And so that was really a big issue. And one of the other thing was the use of fluid rehydration and electrolytes rehydration. It was really huge for them, and that made a huge difference for us in our response because it kind of speaks differently to how we see our own sporting activities go on, where kids and athletes seems to fall after every race, and there is poor attention given to the nutrition and hydration on the day of the event, and that's really something that I would really like us to focus on.
Okay, that's very interesting. The point you're making there about what the athletes are requesting, those international athletes, in terms of before the event, all the different massage therapies they would need, and so on. Tell me a bit more about that. Is it part of the warm-up, or is it even before they get to the stage of warming up, it's a routine thing for them? And which muscle in particular, for example, athletes, the athletes, you assume they're running, and I guess some will do throws, but if we're talking about athletes who do sprints and long distance running, I would like to assume they're talking about the muscles of the legs and so on. But am I assuming wrongly and thinking they also massage other upper body muscle as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is one reason why our massage, the masseuse on our team this year was asking us to tell them early who are the people coming so they can research their specialities, because their specialities will determine what kind of muscle group are favored more than others. But really and truly, it felt more like routine. Like this is something that these athletes are accustomed to. They're expecting this, and it is part of their preparation for their event. And so that kind of psychological understanding is something I wish that we can culture in our own people as well. That there is this kind of a physiotherapy, massage therapy, and musculoskeletal nurturing that must happen. That must go hand in hand with the athletic and sprint and those sort of training. So yes, it felt like it was routine for them. It felt like it was also preventative for them, because by having a muscle that is well relaxed and so on, you prevent some of the hamstrings and the strains that can happen as a result.
Yeah, I was
of that.
actually getting to that point. I would imagine that much of it is to prevent injury.
Absolutely.
Because once you're injured, that throws you back. You can't compete. You have to wait for recuperation and so on.
Yeah.
Right. Now, just not to knock our local athletes, because it's a learning process still, because we see at intercall time and so on the local athletics school games, a lot of them are, there's a lot of injuries.
Yes.
The injury rates seem to be high.
Yeah.
Is it that if we adapt those protocols in terms of preparation, I know, and all due respect and compliment to our local track and field coaches and so on, I know we spend a lot of time training and producing some good talent. But to me, that's not all. It seemed to be as if we need to be looking at the other areas as well. The nutrition, the preparation, the warm-ups, proper warm-up protocols, proper muscle readiness protocol, and so on, and of course proper hydration and so on. Tell me about that at a local level and the importance of this.
That is a particular issue that has really piqued my concern for over the last decade or so, having been involved in intercalls almost every year. And it's not just intercall. To my mind, is a consciousness that all sporting persons, whether it be coaches, teachers, parents, everybody must understand. A lot of focus is paid to the actual skill itself. So footballers, for example, do a lot of practice on the field, but how many times do they actually sit down and think about what am I putting into my body? How is it benefiting my body and benefiting the sporting event itself? So I believe that although it is known that nutrition is important and hydration is important, there are probably a number of things that is preventing coaches and teachers and parents from follow through on those sort of things, because we know this is absolutely important. And so I want to encourage parents, encourage teachers and coaches and trainers and everyone that enough attention must be paid to the nutritional aspect of the athletes, the hydration aspect of the athlete, and also understanding that there is special nutrition and hydration needs that must happen during training, which is different to what happens in competition, which is different to what happens after competition. So there's 3 stages that must be put together, because your body has certain requirements for those things. The use of complex carbohydrates and the use of electrolytes. We have the best electrolyte around the place, which is coconut water, but of course we find that in the intercall.
Coconut.
Everything else happened. So I would really want more of that kind of attention, and the Grenada Invitational upholds that point, because when the international athletes came, they had no injuries, but we saw how important and the kind of effort they put into their hydration and their nutrition. So I think we are on the right track.
In terms of local athletes and so on, we look at intercall games and so on. What are some of the common recurring injuries that keep popping up?
One of the major injuries, and I don't even want to call it injuries, exhaustion on the day, because the kids do not eat well, don't drink enough, and really exhaustion. And then probably the next part of it is muscle injury, tearing of muscle fibers. And an athlete who tears a muscle fiber, trust me, it's very difficult to peak later on in life. You have to, so this thing about getting hamstrings and so on, while it might look sexy coming on a track and you pull a hamstring, but that is a very dangerous thing to do, and it really affects you for a significant period of time. We've had injuries where in 100 meters, for example, the guys, get up the block at such aggressive rate that they may have pulled one of the tendons off from the bone and cause something we call avulsion fracture. And so that can happen. Sprains can happen. I mean, very rare do we get fractures and so on. But those tend to be the kind of injuries that we see most often.
All right, I see. Okay, so Grenada Invitation is coming up. One of the issues, drug testing. I know that's a big thing. I mean, because this is an international meet. And so I guess the International Drug Organization will be monitoring Grenada, and they will have to have certain protocols in place. Explain to us how it happens and what are they looking for on the procedure.
Well, we start on the ground. We have our own local anti-doping committee here, which is linked to the regional anti-doping committee, and of course which is linked to the International Anti-Doping Committee. They have a protocol, and they determine how much and what type of tests are done. What we provide for them the number of athletes that are coming, the number of events that are happening, and they use those two into a sort of formula and come up with what type of testing and what events will be tested. One thing they told me for sure is that if any records are broken, whichever records they are, that person automatically gets tested. And so we had a very successful anti-doping experience last year. We expect another successful one this year again. But I want to also use this opportunity to encourage our own athletes and our own parents and so on, that because Grenada is now producing international athletes, we have to be careful about doping issues as well. It is not too early to start encouraging our young athletes to eat carefully. Be careful what kind of things they put into their bodies. I know smoking is a huge thing and drinking is a huge thing. At one point in time, the use of supplements was also a huge issue.
Right.
Our budding athletes must now understand that you cannot just use any supplements as you want. You cannot just do whatever you want, and because you are getting there. So you have to train your mind and train yourself psychologically to be that kind of thing. Of course, there are exemptions in the anti-doping for certain medical conditions, asthma, for example, and the use of steroids in asthma. There is a protocol for this, so our athletes who are asthmatic does not have to worry about that at all. But the point is, everyone has to be careful and to understand that this is really something of international standards, and you really have to be careful.
Well, I know it's a really big thing now in particular, and sometimes some athletes claim that they inadvertently consume it. I know recently in the news there was one particular athlete who got a freebie actually, because I think he said he kissed his girlfriend.
A little too now, a little too deeply.
And so,
yes, I heard
that was the case. But yes, the point is well taken. And Grenada is producing athletes now, so and our expectation of Grenadian producing more athletes will increase. So they have to be aware of that and what gives out there. The beauty of it, we have a lot of natural things down here in the Caribbean, in Grenada, natural foods and so on, which I know the Jamaicans will be proud to talk about their food and their yam and whatever.
Well, we have yam too.
And we have yam too. And we have breadfruit too as well. But you were talking about the services earlier, and in terms of providing services for the athletes, what's about the patrons, people who come to see the games and so on?
And that's the mass casualty aspect of it, because that's what we're preparing in case any mass casualty. I don't want any patrons to get sick, right? That's the default. But what you can be reassured about is that in every stand we will have adequate numbers of personnel, doctors and nurses, and health facilities. Underneath most of those stands, underneath all of the stands are a space allocated for medical attention, both for the patients and the patrons and athletes. Under the main stand we have two, one for the athletes and one for patrons, and under the secondary stand and the bleachers we also have a secondary other space provided there to offer medical attention.
Okay, so basically, just before we wrap up, Dr. Martin, Grenada Invitational will be well prepared, to international standard in terms of medical response, in terms of the medical professionals ready and on standby. Right, because I think there was also ambulance on standby.
Oh yes, we have made sure that we provide the highest level of care that we can provide here, from our registrars and officers right up to consultant levels. So we have our orthopedic consultant that is there with us. Just waiting in case we hope nothing happens. But in terms of our ability to respond, we are well ready for this, and the fact that our health facilities is so close to the stadium as well, that causes some increased confidence that we can adequately respond if needs be.
So last year was pretty good, no major incidents at all whatsoever,
Yes, last year we had a really smooth run. We did provide service though. We had to provide rehydration services, we had to provide physiotherapy and massage services, but they were not provided because of injury. They were provided because that is the natural and normal thing to do if someone is experiencing any little difficulties. So we really hope that this year would be just the same.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Francis Martin of the Subcommittee for Medical Response, Grenada Invitational. Thank you very much for your thoughts.
You're welcome.
All right. We take a quick break. When we come back, we link up with Michael Bascom in New York. the countdown is on. The big date, April 21, Grenada National Stadium, the Grenada Invitational. And they are snapping up tickets in bunches from all over the diaspora and even here in Grenada. The organizers said people aren't buying tickets like one and two and one and two. They're buying in bunches, 14 and 15 and 20 and so on. So that all that is good. Now, about the athletes. Who are the athletes coming to Grenada? We're linking up with games organizer Michael Bascom. Michael, first question to you. How are things progressing with the athletes for the Invitational in April?
Thanks, Rawle. Well, we are progressing quite smoothly for the second staging of the Grenada Invitational on April 21st. I could tell you that in terms of the athletes, we have quite a number of athletes who have indicated their interest in participating in the Grenada Invitational. We have started registering some of these athletes. Some are local, quite a bit from the region, and of course there are those international athletes who are already expressing interest. It's quite early in the season for some. We know we are actually in the Indo season, so some are still, watching their schedule. In fact, they have not indicated how they will start their outdoor season as yet. So we expect probably in the next few weeks, we'll probably have, as last year, we'll have a flood of, interest for participation in the Grenada Invitational. But I can tell you that there's quite a number of interest in terms of athletes, their agents and their coaches as well, who are expressing interest in the Grenada Invitational. For the past 2 weeks, I've been attending some of the indoor meets here in New York, and I've been meeting with some of the agents, some of the athletes themselves, and they have been indicating their willingness to participate in the Grenada Invitational on April 21st at the Kirani James Athletic Stadium.
We're less than 3 months away. How will you compare the preparations this year to last year's inaugural year?
Well, I can tell you, comparing last year, where we basically had 5 months to pull off an event of that magnitude, we are way advanced this time around. In fact, as you recall, last year, tickets went on sale at the end of January. For this 2018, we actually had tickets going on sale sometime in November of 2017. And the local organizing committee, as a matter of fact, has been meeting since after the first event. They met to review the 2017 event and to start preparations for the 2018, including meeting with various stakeholders. So I can tell you that in terms of preparation, in terms of the comparison where we are this year compared to last year, I think we are way advanced and we are on stream once again for another successful Grenada Invitational.
Well, what are some of the biggest challenges you're faced with in staging this year's event?
Among the biggest challenges, I would say, are basically deciding on who are the athletes that you will, want to compete. So many athletes have expressed interest. Then you have to also cater for those who you want to, personally invite, and that I think would be the biggest challenge, especially for the technical. Will be going through all the details to ensure that we have very competitive events. So these, I would say, are some of the biggest challenges in putting on an event like that. It's not an easy task. I am seeing it for myself, speaking to the technical persons, that's Colin Peters and Bruce Swan. I know how painstaking it is with all the information they will have to get in terms of deciding on who are the athletes. In fact, in one particular event, you have as many as 10 entries. Now, it's only 8 you can cater for. So you have to decide who are the 8 you will decide on. So these are some of the challenges that the organizers are faced in putting on an event of that caliber. And there's also the aspect where in some events you have to cater for at least a local competitor. Unfortunately, we do not have many local athletes competing in the elite section in various events, you know, except probably for the 400, probably the 200. When you look at events like the hurdles and, you know, some of the sprints events, and even the long distance or middle distance events, we do not have many Grenadians who are competitive at that international level. So these are some of the challenges that the technical team they are encountering in putting together a program and a cast that can be very attractive but very competitive.
Thank you very much, the Games organizer Michael Bascom. Looking forward to the second Grenada Invitational, April 21st, right here in St. George's, Grenada. And just before we head for the wrap, let's reminisce one more time from last year.
And finally, one single gun affair start in the women's 400 hurdles. Ladies off to the first hurdle and over. On the inside, Hayes Smith is looking well. Wonder how long she can hold that form in lane one, the tightest turn on the track.
Nice surged on that backstretch there.
Very well.
Lewis by McKnight, who now has the lead, and the Olympic bronze medalist, who finishes very, very well, though, trying to keep pace with her through 200 meters gone in this race.
Right, Sparkle McKnight in the blue. Now watch to see if anyone begins to chop steps because of the wind. Now look at Ashley Spencer move up on the inside there in the black. Now passing Sparkle McKnight. Ashley Spencer coming to the home straightaway. What a nice and smooth move as she comes up to the ninth hurdle. It's not over. Sparkle McKnight is out of it, and Leah Nugent now moving up. Nugent and Spencer to the line, and Ashley Spencer's going to hold on to win the 400 hurdles.
Oh boy, are we looking forward to the drama on the tracks on April 21 when all of the athletes from all around the world and the Caribbean and right here in Grenada compete. Oh yes. Right, so thank you very much for joining us. Thanks to our producer Abigail McIntyre. Join us again for another presentation of the Grenada Invitational Countdown. Have a good one.